Welcome back to another episode of BreBre Talks MMA. Thug Rose! She did it. She won. Man, a lot of people are hating on that fight, but I thought that was a great fight. And it was actually a really technical fight, a very good performance from Rose. Honestly, I was expecting, and maybe it's just because I've watched Rose fight so many times, so I already know how good she is on the feet, and there's very few people that can really stand with her and give her problems. But her grappling surprised me more than anything in this fight, and just her ability to, kind of hang in there on the ground with Ribas. I mean, Ribas is no joke. She's a black belt in judo, a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so she's no joke on the ground, and Rose handled that beautifully. And she honestly looked, I mean, there were moments in that fight where Rose looked like she was getting the better of the grappling exchanges. Actually, I feel like if you look at that fight and you look at the grappling, Rose had the better grappling in this fight, which was kind of crazy. And Ribas even had some great moments on the feet too. So it was a really good fight. I mean, I love this matchup. It was just, I kind of had a feeling of how the fight was going to go, but I was actually surprised. I mean, Ribas is more durable than I thought she was. I thought that if she got hit clean with some of Rose's punches, that she would go down. But yeah, I mean, and I thought Rose, if she got taken down, I thought she'd be in trouble, and she handled that beautifully. And she never really accepted the position. Like, she was always, getting in those wrestling exchanges, but still being defensive and offensive at the same time, which I really love about Rose. And I feel like that to me was kind of the part of it that stood out to me the most. I feel like Rose Namajunas has the perfect balance of defense and offense. And, a lot of people might look at this fight and think that, oh, this wasn't an exciting performance. This wasn't whatever people say. But to me, this was a great performance from Rose because, like I said, she was offensive and defensive in all the right ways. And when you're dealing with somebody as dangerous as Amanda Ribas, who not only has incredible grappling but does have power in her hands, I feel like you've got to have just as good of defense as you do offense, and that's something that maybe was a fault of Ribas in this fight. I feel like she was more offensive and not as defensive. She was kind of, that's kind of how she fights though. She's kind of all offense, and that works really well for a lot of fighters. But when you're dealing with someone like Rose, I don't think that works. I feel like that's something that, Rose kind of reminds me a little bit of Robert Whittaker in a lot of ways. Except for I would say she has better defense than Robert Whittaker. But just the way that she fights is very similar. I feel like she's a very mental fighter, just like Robert Whittaker is. And you could compare her to so many different fighters. You could compare her to, a ton. But in Amanda Ribas too, like she almost kind of reminds me of like a female version of Hector Lombard, because in this fight she fought a lot in Southpaw, which I thought was really interesting. But, she's got the judo black belt. She's got that in her back pocket, but then she's got hands too, and she does a lot of damage, and she's so aggressive. She's so intense, and that's why she kind of reminded me of Hector a little bit. But yeah, great fight. Again, beautiful performance from Rose. Amazing footwork like usual, which is always kind of what I expect to see from her. But I feel like the way she moves her head with her punches really worked well for her in this fight. She just, she gets out of the way so beautifully. And I think that's why she kind of reminds me of Robert Whittaker, the way she kind of picks her shots, and when she lands, she gets out of the way. And in some ways, she kind of does that to a fault, because it makes it harder for her to finish her opponents when she's kind of just getting out of there immediately. Sometimes I feel like if she were to hang out in the pocket, then she would probably be able to get to a finish or get a knockout. But at the same time, when you're dealing with somebody like Amanda Ribas, you really don't want to hang out in the pocket with her, because, she might throw a nice little hook and you're out of there. So, and that's something too with Amanda Ribas. I love the way she fights, because she makes it a dog fight. She makes it ugly. She makes it dirty. She's in your face. She's pressuring. I love that about Amanda Ribas. But I feel like for Amanda, one thing that I would like to see from her more would be just kind of focusing more on the basics with her striking. She threw a lot of spinning back fists, a lot of spinning kicks. And I feel like, unless you're a striking specialist, I really don't want to see that as much. And not that she didn't do it well, because obviously her technique is incredible, but applying it to MMA is a lot harder unless striking is your specialty. And I feel like that's something we've seen really beautifully done by Stephen Thompson, Edson Barboza. Like, they've got some really fancy kicks. Anthony Pettis is another one. They have fancy technique that they are able to apply to MMA, but I think it takes a long time of mastering that technique before you can really apply it. So I think one thing I would like to see from Amanda Ribas is focusing more on the basics of the striking and really kind of leaning more into her grappling background a little bit too, because she does have that grappling background in both judo and jiu-jitsu. But with the striking, I think she could have a lot of success if she focused more on like the 1s and 2s and, the short hooks that she likes to throw. I feel like she has a lot of success with just very basic striking. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think because your striking is basic makes it bad, because if you look at a lot of the best fighters, they're very good at basic striking. And I feel like that is one thing that Amanda Ribas, if she really could just focus on, like I said, just focus on basic combinations and basic punches and kicks, she would be just a monster to deal with, I think. So I thought this was a great performance from both of them, honestly. I was impressed with Ribas just as much as I was with Rose, and because I was expecting Ribas to get finished in this fight. So I think that's why I was more impressed. She went all 5 rounds with Rose Namajunas. To go all 5 rounds with a former champion, I don't care if you win or not. That's impressive in itself. So I think both of their stock goes up after this fight. I think that Ribas showed she's tough. She has a chin. She's a problem on the feet, on the ground, pretty much anywhere. So I really did like this fight. And Rose even almost got finished in the 3rd round. So yeah, I think this was a good performance for both of these women. I'm wondering if Amanda Ribas would be better at flyweight or strawweight. I really want to see her fight another flyweight just to see kind of which division I think she belongs in, because I don't think she has any issues with being in strawweight. I don't know if she's ever missed weight. I don't know. I haven't really looked into that, but I do know that there's a lot of really big girls at flyweight. So I don't know. Even with Rose, when I saw her fighting Fiorot, I was like, oh, this is interesting, because Fiorot is gigantic, even for 125. And we're going to talk about her in a little bit, but gosh, my nose is itching. I think this microphone makes my nose itch, because every time I start recording, my nose starts itching. But anyways, yeah, amazing fight. I loved it. I think Rose Namajunas, I think she called out Macy Barber was one she called out. I think there was another fight she wanted, maybe the winner of Fiorot versus Blanchfield. I think either of those are a great fight, and I think either of those could get her to a title shot. I think if she beats Macy Barber, that could get her to a title shot. I think if she beats the winner of Fiorot versus Blanchfield, that could get her to a title shot. I think, or Fiorot, sorry, I keep pronouncing her name wrong. I finally figured out it. I'm pretty sure you pronounce it Fiorot, so hopefully I'm saying that right. You guys know how I am with these names. I can't pronounce half of them. But I think that, I think the most interesting matchup is going to be either Rose versus Blanchfield or Rose versus Barber. Because if Blanchfield beats Fiorot, then people are going to be like, oh, well, she's going to run through Rose. But I don't think that's the case. I think Rose presents a lot of problems for Blanchfield, and I think she presents a lot of problems for Barber. Especially with the way Barber fights. She, like Joe Rogan was saying, like she kind of makes it ugly. I feel like that could either be good for her, because then she's kind of forcing Rose to fight her fight, which is exactly what Amanda Ribas did. But I do think that also could create some opportunities for Rose. So I actually really would love to see that fight. I think that would be a great test for Macy Barber. And it would be a good indication of how well is Rose going to do at flyweight, because we really don't know yet. We've seen her fight Amanda Ribas, who is really more of a strawweight than a flyweight. But she's not a small flyweight by any means. She's done more fights at strawweight. So I would like to see her fight a true 125er like Macy Barber, Erin Blanchfield, even a rematch with Fiorot, because remember, the fight with Fiorot, that was her first fight at flyweight, and she dislocated her finger. So I think that deserves a rematch. I would like to see them run it back, even if it's not with like a title eliminator or something. I think eventually that's just a fight I would like to see run back. But yeah, it's interesting. I would love to see Rose make a title run at 125. I mean, could you imagine her as a double champ? That could really change women's MMA. It really could. That could make a huge mark on women's MMA, because then we're talking about she could headline a pay-per-view, and I think she has before. Maybe her and Joanna did. I can't remember if they were co-main or main event. But to see a female fighter be able to headline a pay-per-view would just be amazing. It would be amazing. So I'm selfishly kind of hoping that Rose does end up getting a title shot at some point and winning, because I do kind of want to see Rose become double champ. But at the same time, I mean, there's some absolute killers at women's flyweight right now. I mean, just those four that I just talked about: Rose, Blanchfield, Fiorot, and then Barber. So there you go. Like those are four killers right there. And then you're not even talking about the current champion and the former champion, Shevchenko and Grasso. So I feel like, yeah, that's going to be interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens at women's flyweight. Are they going to do the Ultimate Fighter, and are they going to make that the next title fight? I would think that they would. But they just started filming for the Ultimate Fighter, so how long is that going to take? When's that going to be done? Are we going to have a title fight in between? Are we going to have an interim title fight? I wouldn't hate that idea. I wouldn't hate Rose Namajunas versus the winner of Blanchfield Fiorot for an interim title. I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't be mad at Barber versus the winner of that for an interim title, honestly. It's just going to depend on how things play out. This fight, this upcoming fight this weekend is going to play a huge role in all of that. So I'm really, really interested to see how this matchup goes between Fiorot and Blanchfield. But we shall see. Anyways, moving on to the co-main event of this weekend. We had Carl Williams versus Justin Tafa. Carl Williams ended up winning this fight. I agreed with the judges on that one. Wasn't really a super eventful fight, but it was very clear who the winner was, in my opinion. I don't think there was much argument on that. And then Edmen Shahbazyan getting himself back in the picture here. He got a nice first round finish, and I was impressed. I mean, he was kind of getting mauled in that fight and then turned it around. So, yeah, I love to see it. I love seeing a fighter kind of really stay in the fight and come out ahead after. I can't remember exactly how it played out, but I remember he was in trouble early, and then he turned it around and ended up finishing him in the first round, which was just awesome. So that was a great performance. And I feel like, I don't know, Shahbazyan is one that they kind of rushed. I mean, they put him in there with Jack Hermanson like pretty early in his career, and yeah, I feel like that was kind of stupid. And they were hyping him up so much, and I'm like, he's 22 years old and he's fighting Jack Hermanson. I'm like, how do you guys think this is gonna go? Like, I don't know anybody who knew anything about MMA that thought Edmen was going to win that fight. Like, it was just stupid. Like, why would you put him in there with Jack Hermanson? Like, no. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that he's kind of making a resurgence, because I do think there's a lot of talent there. It's just like, put him in there with guys that are more on his level, and I think this was the perfect fight for him. So, Anyways, the best performance of the night, in my opinion, was the Peyton Talbot versus Cameron Simon. Peyton Talbot finished Cameron Simon in the second round. Finished him at 21 seconds into the second round. It was an absolutely beautiful performance. He does a great job in the pocket. He's got a really nice check hook that he threw multiple times and landed it almost every single time he threw it. And he also does a really good job just mixing it up with different strikes. He's throwing to the head. He's throwing to the legs. He's throwing to the body. He's mixing it up, and he throws all different types of attacks. So he's throwing knees. He's throwing kicks. He's throwing punches. He's throwing nice combinations. He really mixes up his strikes beautifully. So that's one thing I really like about Peyton Talbot. I feel like he is a star in the making. I hate to really get too excited about these guys right away because I know he, pretty recently came off Contender Series, and I remember watching his Contender Series fight, and that was one that I remembered the most out of all of them. But I wasn't sure how he's going to do because I've seen so many times where people do really well on Contender Series, and then you put them in the UFC, and it just, it's just not there. So I was kind of like, okay, I'll see how he does in his UFC debut, and then we'll see, what he's all about. But man, yeah, he looked incredible. That Peyton Talbot is very unique. I feel like he is very marketable, and not because he's a trash talker, not because whatever. I think he's just really good. And he's got that kind of star power about him. I feel like that they could really, if they build him up properly, I feel like he could be a monster. So hopefully they take a similar approach with him that they did with Sean O'Malley, because I think he's got a similar style to O'Malley. I could see them fighting each other down the road, because that's a great matchup stylistically. Obviously, he's not ready for that yet, but I do think that would be a really interesting fight down the road. Yeah, I really, really have been impressed with what I've seen from Peyton Talbot so far. So yeah, sky's the limit for him. And then the next fight on the card, I'm kind of going backwards here, but Yusuf Zalal got a submission win over Billy Quarantillo. This was, I don't know. I feel like this was a very well-matched fight, but I wasn't necessarily expecting Billy Quarantillo to get submitted. But I believe he has been submitted before in a similar fashion to how he got submitted in this fight. So yeah, that was a really impressive performance too. And then Fernando Padilla versus Luis Puello, or Fernando Padilla, sorry. I think that's how you pronounce it because he's from Mexico. This was a fun fight too. Oh my gosh, these fights were so awesome. I don't know why everybody's hating on this card. There were a couple bad fights, like the heavyweight fights weren't that great, and there was some weird stuff going on. But overall, I feel like these were great fights. Aarons versus Stephen Wynn, that was a freaking amazing fight. That was so good. Miles Johns versus Cody Gibson, that was a good fight. Ricardo Ramos got submitted by Julian Erosa in the first round. That was insane. Trey Ogden, that fight was good. Yeah, even the women's fight on the early prelim, or not on the early prelims, but earlier in the prelims. Daria, I can never pronounce her name. She's from Russia, but I thought that was a good fight too. And then before that, we had the bite of the night. Andre Lima ended up winning via DQ because Igor Severino got hungry in the octagon. Somebody should have got that guy a Snickers bar. You can't go in the octagon and fight people if you're hungry, because this is what's going to happen. You need to feed these people before they get in there. I'm joking. This was very weird. So Andre Lima, I believe he was grabbing the fence, and I think that's why Igor, I guess, got the desire to bite him. But two wrongs don't make a right. So I don't know. Maybe he was yelling at the ref and couldn't get his attention. I don't know what happened in there. But yeah, that's not how you That's not how you handle that. So it's just very weird. Very weird. I don't know how you get to that place mentally. And I'm not a fighter, so I don't know. But I'm trying to wrap my head around, how do you get to the point in your head where you think, I'm going to bite this dude? How do you get there? I don't like I don't understand how you could possibly get to that point. I mean, I know it's been done before, not in the UFC. I don't think this has ever happened in the UFC before. And then Andre Lima got it tattooed on him, which I don't know how sanitary that is, but he literally got the he must have done it right after he got bit. I mean, I guess there's probably a lot of tattoo artists in Vegas, but I was like trying to think that through too. I'm like, he must have had it done like immediately after. So I'm like, did they clean it? Did he get it like, how bad was it? Like, was it infected? Because like human mouth is like the worst. Like if you get bit, I think it's worse than being bit by a dog, like, or a cat. Like as far as like the diseases and infections, like I'm pretty sure that's like one of the worst bites you can have is like a human mouth. So, yeah, that was really weird. Things happen, I guess. I just thought it was funny he got it tattooed on him. Like, that's amazing. And then Dana saw it and gave him $50,000. Like, that's pretty, I don't know, that's kind of cool. I wonder if that's going to happen more now that they have this I got bit bonus. Like, are more people going to bite people in MMA now just to, like, or try to get bit because they want to get I don't know. That's funny. And then the first fight on the prelims was Muhammad Usman versus Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin won that fight via unanimous decision. I agreed with the judges on that one as well, but it was kind of an underwhelming fight, so I don't really care that much, really, either way. Yeah, it was an interesting card. It was fun though. I mean, yeah, like I said, a lot of people are hating on this. I think they just saw like 2 bad fights and were like, oh, this card sucks. It's like, no, there's usually always at least 1 bad fight on every card. Like, have we not learned this? Have we not figured this out? Not every fight is going to be a banger, you know? But anyways, so moving on, I want to talk about a few things. So first I want to talk about the hold on, I'm going to pronounce this right. The Fiorot versus Blanchfield fight. I want to talk about this because this is a very important fight. Like I said, in women's flyweight, this is going to have a huge effect on the title picture and what's next for Rose and what's next for Macy. I feel like this is going to really propel things forward in the division. So kind of just looking at the stats, it's really hard to judge this fight on the stats, because if you look at the stats, you would think, you know, like, well, let's just run through them real quick. So Erin Blanchfield's 12-1. Manon Fiorot, I'm going to pronounce this right. Manon Fiorot is 11-1. Erin Blanchfield has 2 knockout wins. Manon has 6 knockout wins. Erin has 4 submission wins. Manon has none. Erin has 6 decision wins, and Manon has 5. They've both got 1 loss, and they are both by decision. So neither of them have ever been finished. And their UFC record is identical as well. Their UFC record is 6-0. So they are both undefeated in the UFC. Now, where there's a big difference is the age. They're 10 years apart. Erin Blanchfield is 24 and Manon Fiorot is 34. So that's very interesting to me. And then the height, there's a slight difference. So, well, not a slight difference, pretty decent size height difference. Manon is 5'7". Erin Blanchfield is 5'4". Erin Blanchfield has 1 inch longer reach. She's got a 66-inch reach, and Manon has a 65-inch reach. Orthodox versus southpaw. So Manon is a southpaw. Erin Blanchfield fights orthodox. And that, I think, is really important. That is also really important here, I think, to note that. because I don't know how many southpaws Erin Blanchfield has fought. I feel like there's not as many southpaws in women's MMA as there are in men's, but I could be wrong on that. But that's just kind of what I've noticed. Significant strikes landed per minute. Erin Blanchfield is 5.58. Fiorot has 6.05. So much higher for Manon. Striking accuracy. Surprisingly, Erin Blanchfield has a higher striking accuracy percentage, 52%, and Manon has a striking accuracy of 39%. Strikes absorbed per minute is almost identical, 3.32 for Blanchfield, 3.31 for Fiorot. Striking defense, 62% for Blanchfield, 69% for Fiorot. So I think Fiorot has the advantage there in the defense for sure. And takedown average, Erin Blanchfield, not surprisingly, has 2.86 average takedowns. I think that's per fight. I can't remember. I think that's per 15 minutes or something like that. Can't remember exactly how that statistic is calculated. But for Fiorot, it's 1.36. And then takedown accuracy, 36% for Erin Blanchfield, 46% for Fiorot. Fiorot has actually really good grappling, very underrated grappling. She's more known for her Muay Thai and striking, but she does have excellent grappling too. And she has probably the highest takedown defense I've seen in a while, 91% takedown defense for Fiorot, 83% takedown defense for Blanchfield. And that's something that is really important. And we saw it in the fight with Jennifer Maia that Manon was actually initiating a lot of grappling exchanges in that fight. So, total takedowns landed in the UFC for Erin Blanchfield, 12 takedowns total in her 6 UFC fights, 7 for Fiorot, which is actually kind of a lot for a striker. And Fiorot has landed 1 knockdown in the UFC. Erin has landed 0 knockdowns, and neither of them have been knocked down thus far in their UFC career. Now let's look at their martial arts background. So Erin Blanchfield is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and Manon Fiorot is a brown belt. I think this is going to be a huge difference maker because Erin Blanchfield has been doing jiu-jitsu since she was a kid. So she's very experienced in the grappling department. And then now a big difference is going to be the striking background. So Fiorot has a 12-0 amateur Muay Thai record, which people might think amateur, it doesn't really matter. In Muay Thai, it matters because there's not a ton of pro opportunities. Especially, I think she's from France. Yeah, she's from France. So probably not a ton of opportunities there. She probably had to travel out for a lot of fights, and especially if you go pro. So, and she probably was like, well, I'm going to do MMA, so why would I spend too much time diving into Muay Thai? So unless you're in Thailand, yeah, it's kind of hard to be a pro Muay Thai fighter and really have a ton of fights. So a lot of Muay Thai fighters are amateur for probably there's pro level amateur Muay Thai fighters. When you watch them, you're like, there's no way they're an amateur. Yeah, they are, because that's just kind of how it goes. And then karate, she's a black belt in karate. Probably not the most effective martial art for MMA, but I think Muay Thai is arguably, outside of wrestling, I would say Muay Thai is probably the second most effective discipline to translate to MMA. So I think that's really important, her Muay Thai background. But anyways, I do really think that Fiorot has a lot of advantages in this fight. She's big, she's strong. Her physicality is probably her biggest weapon other than her striking. But I have seen her face a lot of adversity, even in the fight with Rose. I mean, there was a headbutt, so it's hard to really count that. And she got that nasty cut, but she still, Rose, even though Rose was smaller than her, and had a dislocated finger, I feel like Rose still gave her a really tough fight. And with this fight being 5 rounds, that's really interesting to me because I think out of the two, I think Fiorot is the only one. I don't know. Has she had a 5-rounder? I'm going to check because I can't remember. Manon Fiorot. Let's see. I can't remember if she's had I don't think Blanchfield, maybe she has. I'm going to check because I don't trust myself. Yeah, so actually, before the UFC, Fiorot had a 5-round fight in South Africa. Interesting. And then I'm going to look Erin Blanchfield because I don't think Erin has had a 5-round fight yet, which that's a big deal, you know, especially for a grappler because grappling uses sometimes a lot more energy than striking. So I'm wondering how her cardio is going to be. I feel like a few of the biggest questions for me are going to be, is Fiorot going to be too strong for Erin Blanchfield? Is she going to be just too big? Because I don't know. Because Erin Blanchfield had a great performance against Miranda Maverick, and Miranda Maverick's one of the bigger 125ers. She's kind of around a similar size to Manon. I think she might be shorter, but, you know, she had a great performance in that fight, so I don't know. And then the cardio. You know, if it does go to the 4th and 5th rounds, how is she going to do there? I don't know. And yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think if she's fought anybody that's as tall and long as, well, Manon doesn't have the longest reach, but she is tall. And I am wondering how that's going to go with Blanchfield. How is she going to get her to the ground? Because I don't think that Blanchfield is, and she does have good striking, but she's not a striker, you know? I think Blanchfield has more of an advantage in her jiu-jitsu and her wrestling than her striking. So, because the fight with Taila Santos was really close, and Taila Santos is another Muay Thai fighter. So I am a little worried, like, how is this fight going to look, you know, if Manon is just landing and putting it on her? I don't know. But Taila Santos, she's one of the best at 125. In my opinion, even though she's on a 2-fight losing streak, if you look at both those fights, they're both pretty close decisions. So, yeah, I mean, she's got some impressive wins, and she's got a ton of experience, not only in MMA, but also Muay Thai. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I don't know how to predict this fight because I just don't know how it's going to go. There's so many question marks. Like, how is Blanchfield going to do if it goes to the 4th round, 5th round? How is her cardio going to be? Not that I think she has bad cardio because I've never really seen her struggle with cardio, but I've never seen her in a 4th and 5th round, so I don't know. Also, sometimes when a fighter is going into a 5-round fight, just because they don't have 5-round experience doesn't mean they're not going to be good in a 5-round fight. Because sometimes a fighter is actually better in 5-round fights than they are in 3-round fights. And we see it all the time, you know? So I'm wondering if Blanchfield could be one that's better in a 5-round fight. Who knows? You know, maybe having more time is good for her. So, like I said, I'm really not sure how this fight's going to go. I don't know. I think it's going to be a close fight. I really do. I don't think it's going to be like a one-sided, you know, dominant win for either of them. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think that Fiorot will probably get the better of the striking exchanges, and I think Blanchfield will get the better of the grappling exchanges. So I think if the more the fight stays on the ground, the more it favors Blanchfield, and the more it stays on the feet, the more it favors Fiorot. So it's so hard to predict this one. Women's MMA is incredibly hard to predict, mostly because a lot of these fights don't actually like end in finishes. A lot of them go the distance, so sometimes they're really close fights, and it's just hard to like really know who's gonna get the better of the exchanges. But yeah, like I said, grappling wise, I do think that Blanchfield, even though Fiorot has really good grappling too, I do think Blanchfield has the advantage in the grappling. What makes me nervous about this is looking at Fiorot's 91% takedown defense. and wondering, how is Blanchfield going to get her to the ground? How is she going to deal with her height? She's a lot taller than most of the people that Blanchfield has fought. So I am curious how that's going to be. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Fiorot is one of the bigger 125ers as well. So there's not many fighters that are as tall as her and as physical, like as strong as her either. So I really think that a fight I'm really looking forward to in that division is Fiorot versus Shevchenko. I think that is going to be one of the best women's MMA fights, honestly. Like, I think that's going to be just an absolute, I know, like a technical war, I think is what it would be if those two got in there together. I think I'd probably still give the advantage to Shevchenko, but we'll see how Fiorot does in this fight. We will see, but I am curious how just Fiorot's a southpaw. She's got just a lot of strength. She's got a ton of power in her hands. Her technique with her Muay Thai and her kickboxing overall is amazing. So she does present a lot of problems for Erin Blanchfield. But Erin Blanchfield is young. She's hungry. She really wants to earn a title shot. So I feel like even if Blanchfield doesn't win this fight, that does not get her out of the title picture whatsoever. She absolutely still could make a title run even if she loses this fight. So I think this is a more of a must win for Fiorot than it is for Blanchfield. But at the same time, I think Blanchfield is really hungry and she's very early in her career still, but she does have a lot of experience considering how young she is. So it'll be interesting. But ultimately, I think I am leaning toward Fiorot in this matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Erin Blanchfield secure a victory just with her grappling and, you know, what she's kind of known for. So we shall see. What's next? Oh, I watched Roadhouse this morning, and I will say that I enjoyed it. I liked watching. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. It was cool to see Conor McGregor in a different environment. See him in a movie was really interesting. But I'm not really big on like those highly produced movies. Like, I'll give you guys my top 5 movies in no particular order so you can kind of get an idea of my taste. Because I'm not a Fast and Furious person. I'm not a Transformers, Marvel person. Like, it's just not really my thing. Like, I liked Marvel back in the day, but now it's just become so overproduced and like just commercialized that I don't know. I just don't really like it. My top 5 favorite movies in no particular order: SLC Punk, Reservoir Dogs, Dazed and Confused, Tommy Boy, and then I'd probably put Fargo in there, or at least one Coen Brothers movie. I would say either Fargo or No Country for Old Men. Probably Fargo, but No Country for Old Men's like it's up there. But yeah, those are like my top 5 movies. So that's kind of my taste. I like thrillers and I like crime dramas. I like action, but I don't like it like, I don't know. I like a different kind of action, you know, like I like somebody's breaking in to a drug deal gone wrong and they're shooting up like the whole place and it's crazy and there's cops around and like there's like a bank robbery going on. Like, that's the kind of action I like. I don't like overproduced action movies. Just don't do it for me. I feel like I like a good story. I like a good, you know, banter between the cast. I like movies that really make you think is what I like. I don't like movies that are just, I feel like I'm watching just a bunch of money being thrown into a movie and there's not as much thought into the storyline or the script or like, you know, the chemistry between the actors. Like, that's a big deal to me too. But I did enjoy it. I did think it was cool. I really like that Conor McGregor is doing movies. I think it's awesome. I think that's an avenue for fighters. I think that's really cool, is that, you know, they can really kind of figure out a career after fighting. Is like, maybe they can do movies, because even if you're not like a UFC champion or you're not like a top fighter, just having that skill set makes you a great option for an action movie, or a fighting movie. So I think it's awesome. I think it's setting an example for fighters. Not that Conor's the best role model in the world, especially with, see some of his stuff lately. But I do think that he's a great example for fighters on the business side and the career side of like, hey, here's all these things you can do outside of fighting, and Dustin Poirier's done a great job with that too in GSP. Like, they've been able to find success outside of fighting, which I think is really cool because, as we all know, fighters don't get paid hardly anything until they get to like the top level. And even then they're still kind of underpaid. So, yeah, I love it. I think it's really cool. I think, I like Conor as an actor. I think it's awesome. I would like to see him in another movie. I would like to see him in a different type of role. Like, I feel like he would be really cool in like a Joker type role. I think that would be really cool for Conor McGregor. I feel like he makes a great villain. I think that, he's a great villain character. So I feel like if they could run with that with a different type of movie, I think that would be really cool to see him in like some different roles. Honestly, I'm kind of more excited about Conor's acting career than I am about his fighting career. Because I feel like Conor's still Conor, of course. The skills have always been there. The skills are never going to go away. But I feel like Conor isn't the same Conor that he was, when he was double champ and all that. Like, those days are done, It is cool to see Conor fighting. It's always cool to see Conor fighting. But I just don't think that I think people are expecting him to be the same Conor, and I don't even think that's fair to Conor to expect that from him when you consider all the success that he's had outside of the sport. I don't think it's fair to expect him to have the same hunger and the same passion and the same drive in his fighting career that he did when he was broke. I feel like that's not fair to put that on him. I think that, and I used to be the biggest Conor hater of all time. Trust me. Mostly just for fun. I don't actually hate him. It was just fun because my friend was a really big Conor fan and I was, just trying to be funny. But I just think it's fun to hate on him. When people are really big Conor fans, I'll always just like find any way I can to make fun of Conor. But I don't really like hate Conor like that. Like, I actually have a lot of respect for Conor and what he's done for the sport. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's fair to expect Conor to be the same Conor, and I don't think that people should expect him to be the same, and that goes for his fans, because a lot of his fans are still painting him to be this greatest of all time fighter, like everyone thought he was when he was on top, but he's not that guy anymore. He's still Conor, he's still great, he's still talented, but to expect him to be able to compete with somebody like Islam Makhachev is just not even fair. It makes no sense. They're not on the same path, Islam Makhachev is on a much different path than Conor McGregor and lives a much different lifestyle. So, yeah. But anyways, moving on to my next topic. I'm glad that you guys really liked my prediction for Sarukian versus Oliveira. I had a lot of fun doing that one, and I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to do Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. I think this is the fight I'm second most excited for. Sarukian versus Oliveira is the fight I am most excited for, but this is like number 2 for me. And of course, it's a lightweight fight. I get the most excited about lightweight fights just because there's finally some movement in the division. Dustin Poirier's coming off a win. Justin Gaethje's coming off a win. I mean, there's just a lot of great things going on at lightweight right now. Arman Sarukian, he is one that I've been kind of keeping my eye on for a while, and it's really cool to see him get an opportunity like this in such a big stage to UFC 300, fighting a legend, Charles Oliveira. This is his opportunity. I mean, this is a make or break fight for Arman Sarukian. I think that if he loses this fight, I still think he has potential to be champion, but I do think that this kind of is a must-win fight for him. And I think it's a must-win fight for Oliveira, too, because I think Oliveira actually has more to lose than Arman does, because Oliveira wants that rematch with Islam. And, unfortunately, it couldn't come to fruition because he apparently spars with Francis Ngannou, And I'm joking. He doesn't spar with Francis Ngannou, but whoever's sparring with Charles Oliveira, Jesus, what are you doing to this guy? You know, and that's something I've noticed too, is once you get cut one time, I feel like it keeps happening over and over again. Like the scar tissue just gets worse and worse. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a doctor stoppage in this fight, honestly. Like, if you really think about it, like, we haven't seen Charles fight since he's been cut. So, yikes. I don't know. And he got cut again. So, I don't think he's going to pull out of the fight, because I think he probably feels pretty confident going into this one with Arman. I do think people are really underestimating Arman, though. I have seen a lot of people that are predicting him to win, which I think is cool. And I don't think there's anything wrong with predicting Charles to win. And I actually think he has a very good chance of winning. I think it's probably about 50-50 if you really look at it. But at the same time, you know, I feel like more people are underestimating Arman than they are Oliveira. Because if you say like, I'm an Oliveira fan, but I'm also a Sarukian fan. I am an MMA fan, but there's people that are like diehard Charles Oliveira fans. Like, the champ has a name. Like, those people, if you mention anything about Sarukian having any chance to win this fight, they're just like, no, there's no way. And it's like, but if you look at it and like, oh my God, Arman Sarukian just dropped some training footage at ATT. Sorry, my nose is just really... Oh, there was stuff on my mic. Well, that explains why it's making my nose itch. Hold on, let me... Okay, we're good now. Gosh, that was really bothering me. There was like a hair on my microphone. It was like touching my edge of my nose and making me itch so bad. But anyways, getting back to fighting stuff. Arman Sarukian just dropped some training footage from American Top Team, and yeah. Scary, very scary. So, just saying, if you're picking Oliveira, I might take a look at Arman's latest YouTube uploads, because his training looks very intense training, but not intense in the way that Charles Oliveira is training. Charles Oliveira is just like sparring 100%. And Arman, I think, is focusing more on technique and drills. So I guess we'll see which one works better. I mean, Arman obviously is doing sparring too, but he's doing a lot of technique work, which I think is really important. And I think we're going to see some new stuff from Arman in this fight, which I'm really excited for. But anyways, moving on, I'm going to do a prediction for Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. This fight is going to be extremely interesting because it's not a title fight. I guess it's not a division title fight. It's a BMF title fight, and it's 5 rounds. So I'm really excited. And the funny thing is that Justin Gaethje has never gone a full 5 rounds before. He went to the 5th round with Tony Ferguson and got the finish in that fight, but he's never made it a full 25 minutes. So, I mean, I know he's been scheduled to go 25 minutes multiple times, but he's never made it to the end of a 5th round. On the other hand, Max Holloway has gone to a 5th round, or finished a fight, a full 5-round fight, multiple times, several times. I don't even know how many, probably like 10 times, honestly. He's been in so many title fights. So this is going to be really interesting. And let's just run through the numbers real quick. So Justin Gaethje is 25-4 in MMA. Max Holloway is 25-7. Justin Gaethje has 20 knockout wins compared to Max Holloway, who has 11 knockout wins. And Justin Gaethje has 4 decision wins compared to 12 for Max Holloway. And the number of knockout losses for Justin Gaethje are 2, so he's been knocked out twice. Max Holloway still never been knocked out. Submissions, Justin Gaethje has been submitted twice. Max Holloway has been submitted once. I believe that was Dustin Poirier back in Max Holloway's debut. I believe that was when he got submitted. Hasn't been submitted since then. And Max Holloway has lost to decision 6 times in his MMA career. The total of UFC fights, this is where we get really interesting. The the total number of UFC fights for Justin Gaethje, he's been in 12 UFC fights. So Justin Gaethje has 12 UFC fights under his belt. Max Holloway has 28 UFC fights under his belt. So over double the amount of UFC fights for Max Holloway. Justin Gaethje's record in the UFC is 8-4. Max Holloway's record is 21-6. So, no, those numbers aren't adding up. Hold on here. Hold on. I done messed up. I messed up. What did I do? Maybe he's 21-7. Hold on, guys. Hold on a second. Hold your horses. Hold on. I messed up. So he was 4-0 when he entered the UFC. And he has how many losses? 7 losses. Okay, so that's where I messed up. He is 21-7 in the UFC. Sorry. So Max Holloway is 21-7 in the UFC. And here's another interesting statistic. In their last 5 fights, Justin Gaethje is 3-2. Max Holloway is 4-1. Justin Gaethje is 35 years old, so he is 3 years older than Max Holloway. Max Holloway is 32. They're both the same height, 5'11". Justin Gaethje has 1 inch longer reach with 70-inch reach, and Max Holloway has a 69-inch reach. They are both orthodox. And here's where we get really interesting. So significant strikes landed per minute, 7.35 for Justin Gaethje, 7.17 for Max Holloway. Striking accuracy is 60% for Justin Gaethje, 47% for Max Holloway. But one thing that's very important to note on these statistics is these are based on their UFC fights. Justin Gaethje has had 12 UFC fights, so the 60% is only based off of 12 fights. The 47% is based off of 28 fights for Max Holloway. So the numbers can be a little... That's why you can't rely on statistics, because it's very skewed. Now, here's a very interesting statistic here. Strikes absorbed per minute for Justin Gaethje is 7.5. That's extremely high. That's really high. Gosh, my nose is still itching. God. I'm like trying not to scratch it. It's just like a little itch right here. But anyways, so yeah, so getting back to what I was saying, Justin Gaethje, 7.5 strikes absorbed per minute, 4.75 strikes absorbed per minute for Max Holloway. That's a huge difference. Huge difference. And if you look at the Calvin Kattar fight, you know, it's like, that's kind of scary. That's a scary statistic for Justin Gaethje in this fight. And then striking defense, 53% for Justin Gaethje, 59% for Max Holloway. And again, that's based off of 28 fights. So very much a big advantage in the defense for Max Holloway. Takedown average is 0.13 for Gaethje and 0.27 for Max Holloway. Takedown accuracy, 25% for Gaethje, 53% for Holloway. So I feel like Holloway kind of has a little bit underrated grappling. Takedown defense, 75% for Justin Gaethje and 84% for Max Holloway. That's a very impressive number. If you've been in 28 UFC fights, and think of all the 5-rounders that Max Holloway's been in, and you are defending 84% of the takedowns, that's impressive. That is really, really impressive. So, average submission attempts per 15 minutes, 0 for Justin Gaethje, 0.3 for Max Holloway. Takedowns landed in the UFC. Justin Gaethje has 1 takedown in the UFC. Max Holloway has 7. Total knockdowns landed in the UFC. Justin Gaethje has landed 6 knockdowns in his UFC career. Max Holloway has 10 knockdowns. So Justin Gaethje has more knockouts, but oddly enough, Max Holloway has more knockdowns. And that's probably just because he's been in more fights, honestly. Number of times knocked down in the UFC. Justin Gaethje has been knocked down twice. Max Holloway has never been knocked down in all of his 28 UFC fights. Still never been knocked down, which is absolutely insane. That guy's chin is made of granite. So let's look at some of the grappling statistics. So Max Holloway's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, pretty high ranking in jiu-jitsu considering how good of a striker he is. And I think that's just, sheer experience. Justin Gaethje did wrestle in D1 NCAA, so I think that's important. I think that, who knows, we might see some grappling in this fight. We really might. Shortest fight time for Justin Gaethje is 12 seconds. Shortest fight time for Max Holloway is 1 minute 39 seconds. Longest fight time for Justin Gaethje is 23 minutes and 39 seconds. And then for Max Holloway, 25 minutes. Obviously, he's gone the full 25 minutes many times. And most strikes landed in one fight. This is a very interesting statistic here. The most strikes that Justin Gaethje has landed in one fight is 143. The most strikes that Max Holloway has landed in one fight is 445. The reason why that number scares me for Justin Gaethje is because of the number we talked about earlier. That is strikes absorbed per minute, 7.5. Think about it. That's scary. That's a scary thought. Now, there were some things that I noticed on film. One thing that Justin Gaethje does really well is he throws a lot of nasty leg kicks, and I feel like that, I could imagine that's probably a big part of his strategy with Max Holloway, because we have seen Max Holloway get hit with leg kicks. We saw it a lot in the Volkanovski fights. So yeah, I think that's going to be a huge weapon for him. Could be the difference between winning the fight. The leg kicks could be, because that was what won Volkanovski. I think it was either the first or second fight was the leg kicks. So yeah, I could see that being a huge problem for Max Holloway, honestly. One thing about Justin Gaethje, he does have a lot of problems with defense. He doesn't move his head a whole lot. So the good thing is, though, that he does have a chin. We saw him eat some real big shots from Tony Ferguson and still ended up finishing that fight and put on a masterclass. So I don't know how much that's going to play into this, just because, Max Holloway doesn't have the kind of power that a lot of the lightweights have, but it looks like he's bulking up. So I don't know. This fight is going to be extremely interesting. And one thing about Justin Gaethje, in the fight with Fiziev, he did have some problems with Fiziev's hand speed. So that's one thing I'm wondering. Is Max Holloway going to have the same hand speed at lightweight that he did at featherweight? I don't know. I think he's going to be a little bit slower in his striking. So I don't know if he's going to be able to land as much volume as he normally does. I'm not sure. But either way, I think this is going to be an amazing fight. And one thing that I want to kind of wrestle with in my head is, no pun intended, but I'm wondering, because this is a BMF fight, is this fight going to go any differently than it would if this were a 5-round main event or a 5-round title fight? Is this being a BMF fight going to change the way that they fight? Is this going to be all stand-up? Are they going to grapple? Do you guys think that grappling should be involved in a BMF title? And I think this is a really interesting question that I just want to know. If you could make the rules for a BMF title fight, what do you think the rules should be? Should it be, should there be no grappling? Or should it be like, okay, you can grapple, but you have to do damage? Like, how do you think these fights should go at a BMF? Or do you think there should be any difference? Do you think a BMF fight should just be the same as any other fight? Should it be different? Should they allow the grappling? I think they should. I think grappling should very much be a part of a BMF fight, because if you're going to be the BMF in MMA, you should be able to grapple. You should be able to grapple. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know. I think that sorry guys. Oh my gosh, my allergies are terrible. Jesus. But anyways, if they grapple, who has the better grappling? I honestly think Holloway might have better grappling than Justin Gaethje. And I think that because I've seen Holloway just stay out of danger so many times in grappling situations, and we've seen a little bit more vulnerability with Gaethje in grappling than, but at the same time though, it's not like Holloway was ever fighting somebody like Khabib or Oliveira, so it's kind of hard to say that. So I don't know. But on paper, Holloway has better grappling if you look at the numbers. So I don't know. I really don't know how this fight's going to go. I don't know if it's going to go to the ground. I don't know if it's going to be all stand up. Honestly, I would probably not be shocked if the fight stays standing all 25 minutes and this is an absolute war. But you never know. You really never know. So I want to know what you guys think. You know, I get people have their picks of like, oh, Justin Gaethje's going to win, Holloway's going to win. But what I really want to know is, how do you think this fight is going to go? Do you think this is going to be a stand-up fight? Do you think they're going to mix it up with grappling? Do you think it's going to be more grappling than they've ever done before? I mean, it looks like Gaethje's doing a fair amount of wrestling training in his camp. So I don't know. I really don't. Another interesting thing I saw was that Justin Gaethje was sparring with Corey Sandhagen, which, man, if you're going to be fighting somebody from a lower division, I think that's one of the best fighters you could bring into your camp is Corey Sandhagen, because he's very tall and long for bantamweight. And so he has a big speed advantage over Justin Gaethje. And I think that's why it's good sometimes for fighters to spar with guys that are in lower weight classes, because guys in lower weight classes a lot of times can be trickier because they do have faster hands, they have faster kicks, they're more explosive. So I think it's good that Justin Gaethje is sparring with somebody in a lower weight class. I think that's brilliant. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this fight goes all 5 rounds, if it's an absolute war. That's kind of what I'm expecting in this. But let's kind of dive into Holloway a little bit more. So, like I said, he's eaten some leg kicks in past fights, so I do think that's going to be a big weapon for Justin Gaethje. Max Holloway is a high-volume striker. That's kind of how he wins fights a lot of times, is just with sheer volume. Justin Gaethje's more kind of a power. He's not a brawler. I wouldn't even call him a power puncher, because he does have so much great technique with his kicks. So I wouldn't call Justin Gaethje a power puncher, but he can be a power puncher, and he has his moments where his power wins him fights a lot of times. So now Justin Gaethje, hold on. This is driving me insane. My nose is itching so bad. But anyways, so with Max Holloway being a volume guy, I feel like people kind of underestimate his power a little bit. Max Holloway does have power. I think it's just about being precise. Like, if he hits you at the right time in the right spot, like, he can shut your lights out. And that's what happened with Korean Zombie. So, and Korean Zombie's known for his chin. So, yeah, I think that a big question in this fight is, first of all, how is Justin Gaethje going to do in a 5-round fight? If it even makes it to the 5th round, you know, how is he going to do? Because he does have really good cardio, and he trains in Colorado. He trains at elevation. So I think he's going to be just fine if it goes all 5 rounds. I actually am excited to see that, and I hope this fight goes all 5 rounds, because I want to see a full 25 minutes of Justin Gaethje. I really do want to see it. So it's going to be interesting, and Max has really never fought anybody like Justin Gaethje, and Justin Gaethje has never really fought anybody like Holloway. So I think this fight is really hard to predict for that reason, and it's almost kind of different, like I was saying, I don't know if Holloway is going to have the same speed at 155 that he had at 145. And I'm also wondering kind of why he's bulking up for this fight, because it looks like he is, and I think that's good, but I wonder if he's going to be heavier than he normally is walking around, or if he's staying at the same weight, because it did seem like he cut a lot of weight at featherweight. So I don't know how much weight he's going to be cutting in this upcoming fight. I'm not sure. I also heard that he was sparring again. So that's interesting. I'm wondering if the reason he's sparring again is because he's going to be fighting somebody like Justin Gaethje, who Yeah, I would be nervous to get into a fight with Justin Gaethje with no sparring. I think that's kind of insane. So I am glad to hear that Max is sparring again, or at least that's what I heard. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's what I heard. So, and there's a lot of times where fighters move up in weight and they have a lot of success. The big question mark here is Max Holloway's moving up way later in his career. So, and he's moving up into arguably a tougher division. Now, it might not be a tougher division at the bottom of the division, but at the top of the division, I do think that lightweight is still a tougher division than featherweight. So, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting. And I want to see what his power is going to look like at 155 too. You know, is he going to have more power? I wouldn't be surprised if he has more power at 155 and more, I don't know. And also his chin. I think his chin will hold up even better at 155 than it did at 145. So there's just a lot of interesting things. But like I was kind of saying, you know, it does kind of remind me a little bit of when BJ Penn moved up from lightweight to welterweight to fight Matt Hughes, and everybody thought Matt Hughes was going to run through him. And even Matt Hughes was kind of like, you know, what's this guy doing in my weight class? This is my division. And a lot of people doubted BJ Penn. And that's why when he won that fight, he celebrated like crazy, because that was such a huge accomplishment for him. And not that he really thought that he was going to lose that fight, but I mean, a lot of people really were doubting BJ Penn in that one, because he was moving up from lightweight and fighting, you know, one of the best welterweights of all time, Matt Hughes. And he did it. He made it look easy. So I think that, in you know, what's funny about that is Max Holloway and BJ Penn are both Hawaiian. So that's why it kind of reminded me of that, just because, you know, he's another Hawaiian fighter. He's a legend. I think it would be really cool to see Max Holloway go for double champ status. I feel like he is capable of that 100%. I think actually that Max Holloway has a better chance of becoming double champ than Volkanovski did. Because if you think about it, you know, Volkanovski's really short, even for 145. So at 155, he's just like, you know, these guys are towering over him. Holloway doesn't have that same problem. You know, he's 5'11". He's pretty tall, even for featherweight. So I think that this is really interesting. This is a great move for Max Holloway to make. He's already ran through everybody in the division except Volkanovski. So moving up to 155 makes a lot of sense for me. The BMF title, I don't think you could have picked two better guys to be in the BMF title fight at UFC 300 than Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. These guys are absolute savages. They both have a great chin. They're both really tough. They both are very offensive. So I think this is just a great fight. On paper, it's hard to predict. Looking at film makes it even harder, honestly. I thought looking at the film would make it easier to predict this, but it made it even more difficult. So I don't know. I think I'm leaning toward Justin Gaethje a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if Max Holloway just completely outclasses Justin Gaethje in the striking. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but he's done it before, you know, and I know he didn't do it to anybody in the lightweight division. But man, that beating he put on Calvin Kattar, like, that just makes me really nervous for Justin Gaethje, just because Justin Gaethje, he does get hit a lot, you know, and a lot of Justin Gaethje's losses have been to grapplers. So I am curious how this is going to go. I mean, I think Justin Gaethje is probably one of the top 10 best strikers active in the UFC right now, and I think Max Holloway is up there too. You know, I mean, you just don't see that kind of boxing offense and defense like Max Holloway has. So I don't know. I really don't know what to think here. So my prediction is that I think this is going to be an absolute war. I think that this is going to be the best fight of the night. In my opinion, I think that you can't get much better than this. Like, honestly, I think people are really sleeping on Holloway in this fight. I think he's going to bring a lot more problems to Justin Gaethje than people think. And I think it's going to be a war. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think it's going to go all 5 rounds, all 25 minutes. And I have no idea who's going to win. But I do think it's going to be a war. And I think it's going to be a fight that will probably go down in history as one of the best fights ever. That's my prediction. So, yeah, if I had to pick one, sure, I'll pick Gaethje. But it's not like a one-sided thing. I mean, I really do think it's kind of 50-50. I really think that this fight is more 50-50 probably than any other fight on the card, in my opinion. I think people are really sleeping on Max Holloway. Just because he's moving up in weight, that doesn't mean anything. Max Holloway will fight a heavyweight if they asked him to. That guy is a machine. So, yeah, I think, people are really sleeping on Holloway. But that's what I think. I think it's going to go all 5 rounds. I think it's going to be a war, and I cannot wait to see it. So I'm very excited for this fight. And kind of just looking at the card, Pereira versus Hill, Wiley versus Jiaonan. So many good title fights on this card. And even like Sarukian versus Oliveira. It's not a title fight, but it almost feels like a title fight just because it's such a high level fight. And because, Charles used to be the champion and Arman Sarukian's kind of like making his way up to becoming champion. And if he wins this fight, I have no doubt that he will probably become champion. I think he is the one guy in the division that could that already did present problems for Makhachev. I think him as a fully evolved fighter versus Makhachev, that's a scary thought for Islam. I think that is the scariest fight in the division for Islam Makhachev by far is Arman Sarukian. So if Arman wins this fight, I do think he has a really good chance of becoming champ unless Islam decides that it's time to move up to 170, which I would not be shocked if that happens. And if that does happen, so let's say that Islam Makhachev fights Dustin Poirier in, I think they said July is what they were. That was an idea. I don't think there's anything official yet or anywhere near official, but, they're planning on fighting. So Justin Gaethje is fighting Max Holloway for the BMF title. Charles Oliveira and Arman Sarukian, I would consider that a title eliminator. So let's say that Islam does fight Dustin Poirier, and let's be real, Islam Makhachev will probably win that fight. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think the safe bet on that fight is Islam Makhachev. You can never count out Dustin Poirier, but I think that there's more of a blueprint for a victory for Islam there because of the Khabib fight. My God, my nose will not stop itching. It's like really making me mad now. But anyways, so both of those fights are huge fights at lightweight. So let's say Dustin Poirier fights Islam Makhachev. Let's say Islam Makhachev wins, which he probably will, whatever. So then what happens? Is Islam going to want to fight Arman Sarukian? I doubt it. And I think that's why Islam wants the Dustin Poirier fight, because here's what he can do. He can say, okay, I beat one of the best lightweights to ever do it in Dustin Poirier. I beat the number 1 pound for pound, Volkanovski. I beat Charles Oliveira. What else do you guys want me to do at lightweight? Oh, you want me to beat Arman Sarukian? I already beat him. Then he's going to try to move up to 170. I guarantee you this is what's going to happen. I guarantee you. Islam Makhachev's going to fight Dustin Poirier in July, if that fight gets booked. Now, if that fight doesn't happen, I think Arman has a chance of getting the Islam fight. I really do. But if Islam fights Dustin Poirier, you can wave Arman's title shot goodbye. Because I think what's going to happen is if Islam beats Dustin, he's going to move up to 170, fight Leon or whoever's champion at the time. And then the winner of the BMF title is going to fight the winner of Oliveira versus Sarukian for the vacant or interim lightweight title. That's my prediction on what's going to happen at lightweight. So we'll see. I could be wrong, but if that Dustin Poirier fight gets booked, if that actually really does happen, then I do think Islam is going to move up to 170 if he wins that fight. So that's what I think, but we'll see. So just kind of running through some other fights that are on this card because I want to see what prediction you guys want to see next. We got the main event, Pereira versus Hill. We got the co-mains, women's strawweight title fight. That's such an exciting fight too. The number one contender. This is the first time ever we've had a Chinese champion versus a Chinese challenger, I believe, ever in MMA. So this is super exciting. And then we've got Justin Gaethje versus Holloway, which I just did that prediction right now. I already did Oliveira versus Sarukian. We got Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. I feel like that would probably be the least interesting prediction in my opinion, but you know, if you guys want me to do it, I will. And I am going to do a deep dive on all of these at some point before UFC 300. I'm going to drop that episode. So I am going to cover all of these fights, but I just want to see if there's a fight that you really want me to like dedicate to and do a full video on just one fight. We've got Prohaska versus Rakic. We've got Cater versus Sterling. Holm versus Harrison. Yusuf versus Lopez. And then these early prelims are insane. We have Cody Garbrandt versus Davison Figueiredo. Jim Miller versus Bobby Green. Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. That's going to be an absolute banger. I feel like people are really sleeping on that fight. Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. So that was a lot of words. I'm kind of out of breath, but let me know what you guys think. Which prediction do you want me to do next? And I will do whichever one gets the most requests. So just let me know. But I am really having fun doing these predictions. I'm really excited for UFC 300. I mentioned it before, but I will be at UFC 300 doing media under Kimura, which is a Swedish-based MMA media outlet. I'm super excited. It's going to be my first UFC event, my first pay-per-view. So very, very excited. Also, I almost forgot, local MMA. I got to give my shout outs to local MMA. So first of all, hold on. Gosh, my nose is so itchy. This is really annoying. So local MMA, Tivon Taylor just got a huge win over the weekend in Synergy. So I'm really excited. He won a title in Synergy and he won a title in Nemesis, his last fight before that. And he's an amateur, but he's honestly probably like right about to go pro, I think. I mean, I can't remember. I'm trying to see what's his record. 8-3. Oh, yeah. He's probably like right on the cusp of going pro. So really excited about him. He's really talented. He trains at Wolf's Den too, which is where Sean Woodson trains, which is what I want to talk about because Sean Woodson just got a fight announced with Alex Caceres. This is huge. This is not only a huge fight for Sean Woodson because he's cracking into the top 15 now, but it's going to be in his hometown. It's going to be in St. Louis. It's going to be insane. This is amazing. This is so huge for St. Louis Combat Sports, so huge for Sean. And honestly, like if you haven't watched Sean Woodson fight, he is like, gosh, he's so good. He is so good. He's so unique because he has probably the longest reach of anybody in the division at featherweight. And he's, I would think, probably the tallest too. He's huge. So he also has a ton of boxing experience and probably has more boxing experience than most fighters in featherweight right now, honestly. So I think he presents a lot of problems even for the top 5 at featherweight. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but if you look at what he's done so far, it's really not crazy to think that he could be champion. I absolutely think he has what it takes to be champion. He's finally getting into the top 15. I mean, in that division, it does kind of take a while to get into the top 15, especially for a guy like Sean Woodson, who has a very unique style, a very difficult style to deal with. So it's very difficult for him to get fights. So I'm really glad that this fight is happening. May 11th, UFC St. Louis. He's fighting Alex Caceres. I believe Alex Caceres is either number 15 or number 14. I can't remember exactly. But this is a huge fight, not only for Sean, but just for featherweight in general. Because if Sean wins this fight, that's a really big win for him. And that's really going to put him on the map in that division. So yeah, let's all just root for Sean because like that is so huge for St. Louis MMA. And I just think it's so awesome that he gets to do that in front of his hometown. Like, that's so cool. Such a great story that he has. And man, I'm excited. I am really, really, really extremely excited for this. So yeah, I just had to give a shout out to the local scene like I always try to do, because we got some really cool stuff going on here in St. Louis. But that is all I got for you guys today. So thank you so much for watching, listening, however you consume this. The numbers are really growing with my channel and Instagram and everything right now. So I'm really excited to see kind of how far I can take this. And I think I'm really going to kind of put myself on the map with everything that I'm doing with UFC 300 and this whole thing. I'm really just excited about it. So it feels like I've been doing this for a long time, just because I've been studying the sport for so long. Even way before I started covering it, I was a student of the sport. Like, I watched every fight night. I watched The Ultimate Fighter. I watched old fights. I would literally sit and watch fights all day long for a long time. So I am so excited to really be a part of this and be a part of the community. So thank you again for all the support. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.